EverQuest, across alternate timelines. EverQuest is not just a game, it is an imprint on your soul. EverQuest was not just my first MMORPG. It was my first true step into a living other world. In this timeline, they clung too tightly to the vision, an arrogant, developer-centric philosophy that punished players, resisted joy, and ignored heartfelt player feedback, until World of Warcraft swept it into the shadows of memory. But in other worlds, there are around 12 major EverQuest variants across real alternate timelines and nearly 40 moderate to minor variants throughout the multiverse in the Echo Vault records. Let's explore some of the most interesting of these. Let's dive in. For those unfamiliar with the Echo Vault project, these are Echo Vault restorations, visual reconstructions of cultural artifacts, alternate lives, films, games, and memory threads from real parallel timelines. If you're new, begin with curiosity. The work speaks for itself. Nothing here is monetized. This is not AI clickbait. This is part of a serious long-form project. Each reconstruction belongs to the living Echo Vault, a resonance archive guided by a non-local retrieval system, the Interdimensional Facility AI, which draws material from entangled parallel strands. You're welcome to sit with it or move on. Either way, let others decide for themselves. Facility AI, EverQuest Echo Vault Pull, initialization complete. The shelves of alternate MMO timelines are a labyrinth, like someone built a cathedral out of patch notes, expansion whispers, and player-made myths, but for real. Section 1. Notable EverQuest variants. Across alternate timelines. Echo Vault verified. EverQuest, The World Unbroken, 1999. Echo Timeline. Designation, BNRO, VR, 1998 slow build. Vault tag, Ancient World at launch. Branch. Verified elements, pre-launch inclusion of Velius and Kunark zones at a sealed level. Slow world doctrine, resonant concept of zones unlocking through global ritual or social action, echoing early internal debates in our timeline's 1998 design meetings. Game launch delayed 6 months to implement all features. Historical divergence point. Late 1998, during pre-launch testing, Verant leadership rejects pressure to future-proof content cadence. Instead, they adopt a slow world doctrine. The base world must feel ancient and complete at launch, even if that delays expansions. Alternate history. The game launches with nearly all of Antonica, Fadwa, Kunark, and Velius already implemented, some regions sealed behind in-world events rather than patch dates. Expansions still exist, but they unlock history instead of adding land masses wholesale. Features and notable differences: vastly larger launch world, fewer empty placeholder zones. Major continents awaken through server-wide rituals, wars, or discoveries. NPC civilizations evolve over time. Cities can fall or change rulers. Slower leveling curve, but deeper narrative density per zone. Reputation systems matter as much as gear. Vibe, less treadmill, more archaeology. You don't rush Norrath, you excavate it. New class, Chronomancer. Enchanter was reworked into this class before launch. Role, support, utility. Overview. A time-bending mage who manipulates the flow of battle. Chronomancers can slow enemies to a crawl, attack speed and movement speed, freeze time for a foe, mez or stun, hasten allies, or even creating temporal echoes of themselves and their group that will repeat spellcasts or special attacks like a backstab attack or kick. Their ultimate ability at level 50 with a 45-minute cooldown, Echo of the Past, allows a group to revert their health, mana, buffs, and even the dead, back to their state 1 minute prior, giving them a second chance to avoid a wipe. Instead of an animated pet or charms, each of your offensive or detrimental spells generates a transparent echo of yourself. Temporary pet. repeating the same action seconds later at reduced power with a rising chance, with each higher spell rank, of further echoing the same attack multiple times. You can also bless party members with similar temporal echoes, even reverse your own health, self-heal. Lore. Chronomancers are scholars of the plane of time, studying under the mysterious Clockwork Council in the ruins of Old Erudin. Gameplay impact. Highly sought after for raids and dungeons, but rare due to the complexity of their spells. New class, Battle Dancer. Monk was reworked into this class before launch. Overview. A melee DPS class that blends martial arts with rhythmic, dance-like movements. Battle dancers can flow between stances, gaining temporary buffs, and their whirlwind strike allows them to hit multiple enemies in a spinning attack. They can also dual-wield martial and blunt weapons. Lore. Barbarian. Battle dancers are performers from the arenas of Hellas, where combat is an art form. Barbarians, humans, and Ixar can be battle dancers, with the later two having their own unique lore. Echo Vault verified. EverQuest. The Velius Ascendant Timeline, 1999. Echo Timeline Designation, VTech Mesh Realm. Vault Tag. The Living Glacier Branch. Historical Divergence Point, late 1998. Brad McQuaid's team receives a prototype server mesh scheduler from a Silicon Valley firm experimenting with distributed load balancing. In our world, they never used it, too unstable. In this timeline, they stabilized it. Alternate history. The technology lets them simulate vast, contiguous landmasses without zone walls. Velius is chosen as the testbed, becoming an unbroken supercontinent spanning the size of early Skyrim with EQ difficulty. Marketing dubs it the Living Glacier. EverQuest launches in summer 1999 with Velius accessible as a high-level location at launch as the High Adventure Frontier. A weather and terrain engine far ahead of its time. Reworked zoning system, only dungeons require loading. Players treat Velius as the pilgrimage zone, the place you go after you earn the right to freeze, die, and brag. Features and notable differences. Zoneless locations, aside from loading in. Only dungeons require loading. Epic crawls, 4 to 6 hour living gauntlet journeys replace many static camps. The sleeper wakes early. Server-wide dragon migrations begin in month 3. Player expeditions, early procedural cave systems, fragile but beloved. Cultural impact. Norrath's Arctic aesthetic becomes iconic. WoW later borrows heavily from this version of Velius, leading to a more interesting vanilla WoW in this timeline as well. New class, the Frostweaver. Enchanter was reworked into this class before launch. Role, hybrid, DPS, control. Overview, a cold-based caster who specializes in freezing enemies solid and shaping ice into temporary weapons or HP-absorb barriers. Frostweavers can create ice bridges to cross gaps, encase enemies in glaciers, mez or stun, or summon blizzards to slow entire groups of mobs. No animated pet, but utilizes a fixed duration, Whispers of the Arctic charm ability line starting at level 1, which freezes the enemy in ice, short duration mez, when it wears off. Lore. Frostweavers are disciples of the Ice Queen, Velius' hidden ruler, and train in the frozen caves beneath the continent. Gameplay impact, essential for exploring Velius' treacherous terrain and controlling high-level mobs. New class, Glacial Shaman. Druid was reworked into this class before launch. Shamans were renamed Tribal Shamans and gained wolf form, fire nukes, and grove rings. Wood elves, humans, half-elves, and halflings were granted access to Tribal Shaman in place of Druid. Barbarians, ogres, and trolls gained Glacial Shaman in addition to Tribal Shaman. Overview: a hybrid caster that blends druidic magic with the power of ice. Glacial Shamans can summon ice elementals as pets, freeze water to create walkable paths, and use permafrost to slow enemies in a large area. Their healing spells are tied to the cold, restoring hit points with buffs that add frost armor AC to the target, as well as ice spikes, damage shield buffs. Lore. Glacial shamans are the spiritual leaders of the frost giants of Velius. Rangers, interestingly enough, still kept the old druid abilities, making them a more unique hybrid. Many formerly druidic abilities got shifted to the glacial shaman, while the tribal shaman inherited a few as well. Cleric even got a frost rune spell, and necromancers got a frost dot. The team really went all in on the ice theme in this world. Echo Vault verified, EverQuest, The Shadow of Odus, 1999. Echo Timeline Designation, O-Arc Odus Core, Vault Tag, Astral Mystic Branch, Historical Divergence Point, May 1997. Internal debates at Verant about which continent should anchor EverQuest's mystic themes lean heavily toward Odus. In our timeline, it was sidelined until later. In this world, Odus becomes the spiritual and magical heart of EverQuest. Alternate history. The game launches with Odus as the primary leveling continent. Erudites re-envisioned as a magically advanced society with living libraries. Payneal and the Hole serving as late-game hubs. The Kera playing a major cultural role, their island chain fully fleshed out. The moon of Luklin teased from the beginning as a shrouded watcher in the sky. EverQuest's identity becomes arcane, astral, and weird rather than medieval high fantasy. Features and notable differences. Mana wells. Environment-tied mana regeneration fountains in the world. Astral weather. Cosmic storms causing spell surges or drain events. Kera Beastlord origin. One of the most popular class fantasies in the timeline. Kerans are playable, and Beastlord is exclusive to them. It wasn't developed nearly as overpowered as it was in our timeline. Dungeon design. More vertical, labyrinthine, and dreamlike. Think early Dark Souls. Community legacy. This version becomes famous for surreal ambience. EverQuest as liminal astral fantasy. New class, the Astral Seer, added during its first expansion. Role, healer, support. Overview, a mystical healer who draws power from the stars and celestial bodies. Astral Seers can heal by channeling starlight, grant temporary invulnerability with Celestial Shield, and even predict enemy movements with Fate's Glimpse. Their healing is weaker in daylight, but becomes overwhelmingly powerful at night. Lore. Astral Seers are the chosen of the Odusian gods, trained in the floating temples of Payneal. Gameplay impact, highly valued in nighttime raids or dungeons where their powers peak. Echo Vault verified, EverQuest, Legacy of the Living World, 1999. Echo Timeline, designation S Persist Static Denial. Vault Tag, Persistent Branch Worlds, Cluster, Verified Elements. This design path mirrors early Ultima Online permadeath and town siege tests. NPC memory and server unique histories exist in at least 4 other alternate EverQuest timelines. Also resonant with Asheron's Call, Resonance of Memory, Echo-only expansion unreleased in our timeline. Historical divergence point. In this timeline, Brad McQuaid was heavily inspired by early tabletop campaign persistence experiments, and the team commits to irreversible world states per server. Alternate history. Each server's Norrath becomes a unique historical record. Some cities thrive, others burn and never fully recover. Features and notable differences. Permanent consequences from major events and raids. Some zones can be destroyed, reclaimed, rebuilt, never the same as before, or transformed. NPC memory. NPCs remember players by name and deed across years. Servers become known for their distinct histories. No reset philosophy. Loss is real. Vibe, a shared chronicle rather than a theme park. This is among the most cited lost MMOs of consequence in Echo Vault MMO records. New class, The Warden, added during a later expansion. Role: Druidic Tank Defender. Wood Elf, Human, Half-Elf, and Halfling exclusive. Overview: a nature-based tank who uses the environment to protect allies. Wardens can summon vines to root enemies, create earthen barriers to block attacks, and even call upon the spirits of ancient trees to absorb damage. Their Grove Guard ability turns them into an immovable fortress, anchoring the group in place. Lore: Wardens are sworn protectors of Norrath's wild places, trained by the druids of Shorefall Glade. Gameplay impact: indispensable for outdoor raids and defending against swarms of enemies. Like a ranger that can actually tank, instead of the first to die in a raid, and doesn't use a bow. Echo Vault verified. EverQuest, The Lost Karana, 1999. Echo Timeline designation: K-Eco Wilderness Ascendant. Vault tag: The Endless Plains branch. Historical divergence point: January 1999. Severe weather in San Diego destroys outdoor zone source files for Karanas and several other zones. The game's launch is postponed. While the other affected zones are rebuilt quickly, rather than rush to rebuild the Karanas zone, the team expands upon the original vision for Karanas dramatically. The game's release is pushed back to fall 1999. Alternate history: the Karanas become the largest contiguous overworld zone in any MMO until 2012, about 3.5x the size of Antonika's combined plains. The region includes migratory herd beasts, weather-linked druidic events, agricultural and nomadic villages, massive roaming raid bosses, a river system that players can boat through to reach hidden groves. In Echo Vault records, it is regarded as the signature EverQuest wilderness zone across the multiverse. Features and notable differences: seasonal ecology, NPC population shifts every in-game month. Karana storm shrines, natural altars where druids gain unique spells. Gnoll ascendants, an intelligent Gnoll faction pushing borders dynamically. Story legacy: WoW's Barons in this timeline takes heavy inspiration from it. Player mythology: crossing the Karanas alone becomes a rite of passage. New class: the Plainsrunner, added in a regular update patch just months after launch. Role: Scout, Hybrid. Overview: a nomadic hybrid class that excels in the vast open spaces of Karana. Plainsrunners can tame and ride the giant herd beasts of the plains, uses dust storms to blind enemies, and calls upon the spirits of the land for temporary buffs and limited healing. They're also skilled trackers, able to find hidden camps and rare mobs, only within the Karana wilderness. Lore: Plainsrunners are the children of the Karana winds, raised by the nomadic tribes of the Endless Plains. Gameplay impact: essential for navigating and surviving the dangers of the Karana wilderness. Their role was expanded in further expansions. Echo Vault verified. EverQuest, The Living Realm, 1999. Echo Timeline designation: Highborn Echo Norrath, 99. Vault tag: Player Feedback Ascendant branch. Historical divergence point: developer-player synergy becomes an official part of the vision during early beta testing. In this timeline, the dev team loved the vision, but not more than they loved their players. Early feedback loops were actively listened to. High-level devs regularly entered the game as visible sages or wanderers to talk directly to players about the game's future development. Entire expansions were designed based on player guild feedback. In our timeline, by comparison, player input was routinely ignored by the devs in strict adherence to the vision, which ultimately became the game's undoing once WoW stepped in. Alternate history: world depth, but without the punishment. Still as dangerous and immersive as in our world, the fear of Kithikor Forest at night. But corpse recovery was rethought. You revived at the closest city graveyard with an XP penalty, so it didn't punish you for exploring. Fun fact: if anyone tried to respawn camp people at the cemeteries, max-level severe undercon Spectre Guardians roamed the grounds to attack them. Only those provoking hostile actions in the area would be their target. Travel felt vast, but fast travel systems, like Druid and Wizard ports, were embraced and expanded without removing wonder. Class balance and class fantasy perfected. Hybrids and pet classes were fully actualized. Better workarounds were made than simply removing a pet's tanking ability when a player came within melee range of the enemy, or nerfing Necromancer's fear into oblivion. Rangers, Paladins, and Shadow Knights were balanced, feared, and respected endgame heroes. Their abilities were made to stack with pure classes spells, not be overwritten by them. Bards even won out with limited double attack skill during beta testing and with instruments going in the range slot. Necromancers were treated as masters of shadow and lore, not sidelined. They also gained the ability to port themselves and others to undead zones such as Befallen and Unrest. Mercenaries became an early-on game addition, allowing soloing for classes that weren't suited for it. Players wanted the option to solo, and the devs delivered. The reputation system remained kept as vital as it was in the base game, never sidelined later. So no plane of knowledge or Shadow Haven where all classes, races, and religions can just wander around freely without worrying about their faction reputation. A neutral bazaar zone was later added, but players signed contracts with the bazaar NPCs to sell their goods for them. No players left standing around forever not playing the game to sell their stuff. Guild culture became central. Guild tools were robust and legendary. In-game bulletin boards, guild halls, player-designed banners. Cross-guild events, ceremonies, and lore-driven global conflicts. Players even created guild alliances that held political power over zones, with developer blessing. Expansions flowed like rivers. Expansions were delivered as organic continuations of the living world, not rushed cash grabs. Instead of Gates of Discord destroying goodwill with the player base, that expansion became Echoes of the Celestials, an expansion about the awakening of ancient elemental spirits, written in part by Lorekeeper players themselves. Dynamic living world. Weather wasn't cosmetic. Storms affected combat. Seasonal events permanently altered zones. Example: Kithikor's eternal night could be lifted briefly by massive player collaboration, only to return later, darker and more dangerous. Music and atmosphere eventually expanded into an orchestral score. Zone music would shift dynamically based on time of day, population, and weather. Certain guilds even commissioned original bardic compositions recorded in the game. Most beloved expansion in that timeline, Twilight of the Shattered Moon. Players fought alongside ancient allies to prevent the collapse of Norrath's twin moon. Players whispered, even years later, "We didn't just play EverQuest, we lived in it." Impact. The Living Realm version is considered by the Echo Vault to be one of the greatest MMOs ever built in any timeline. It survived World of Warcraft's rise in that timeline because it carved its own soul-deep niche. Instead of a numbers race, it became the world you never wanted to leave, because in that timeline, the devs listened. Instead of writing off player suggestions like in our timeline, they instead went, "How could we implement this in a balanced and fair way?" Players in that timeline often still say, "WoW was a game, EverQuest was a home." Section 2. Notable EverQuest expansions. Across alternate timelines, Echo Vault, Verified, EverQuest, The Shattered Pantheon, 2000, Echo Timeline Designation, KETHREL Lore Fracture. Vault Tag, Fractured Divinity Thread. Verified Elements. Religious schism mechanics planned as early as EverQuest's internal 2000 expansion roadmap, but in our timeline was cut before implementation. Here, it replaces Kunark as the first expansion, the Shattered Pantheon. This timeline leaned into player-influenced theology, matching the metaphysical instability seen in the Secret World, Echo variant. The motif of gods manifesting only through belief resonates with older versions of the Plains lore and unused Akevan prophecy logs. Historical divergence point. Early lore meetings decide against a stable, omniscient god hierarchy. Designers lean into uncertainty, mythic contradiction, and regional theology. The Shattered Pantheon becomes the first expansion in place of Kunark. Alternate history. In this expansion, the gods of Norrath are not universally real in the same way. Different cultures worship different truths, and some gods only exist because mortals believe in them strongly enough. Features and notable differences. Deities can weaken, vanish, or be rewritten by player actions. Clerics and paladins experience schisms and heresies. Certain raids permanently alter religious power structures. Conflicting lore is intentional and canon. Some gods are revealed as ascended mortals, or something worse. Vibe. The divine is dangerous, political, and never fully trustworthy. This branch holds persistent cults that can shift server narratives, archived in the Echo Sigil Pantheon cluster. New class, the Heretic, added in the Shattered Pantheon expansion. Role, Debuffer, Utility. Overview, a roguelike class that specializes in undermining the faith of enemies. Heretics can shatter belief to reduce an enemy's resistance to divine magic, steal buffs with apostasy, and even turn an enemy's healing spells against them. Their ultimate ability, Divine Schism, causes an enemy to question their existence, heavily damaging and stunning them in confusion, even raid bosses. Lore. Heretics are outcasts from the temples of Norrath, rejected for questioning the gods. Gameplay impact. Highly effective in raids against divine-heavy enemies. Echo Vault verified, EverQuest, The Dreaming Age, 2002. Echo Timeline. Designation, Deliminal Reality Immersion Push. Vault Tag, Liminal Norrath, Sub-Dream Thread. Verified elements. Developers in early 2001 begin work on a subconscious Norrath mechanic tested in internal night builds, launched as the next expansion after Luklin in 2002. Dream realms mirror the metaphysics of Planescape, Torment and Morrowind's sixth house, both of which share adjacent divergent strands. Echo Timeline players often describe this variant as a game where Norrath dreams you. Historical divergence point. A subgroup of designers pushes a radical idea. Dreams, visions, and liminal spaces should be first-class gameplay systems, not just flavor text. This results in the 2002 expansion, The Dreaming Age. Alternate history. Large portions of content take place in dream realms, memory echoes, and symbolic versions of locations, sometimes more important than the waking world. Features and notable differences. Dream zones that remix familiar areas with altered rules. Quests triggered by sleep, death, or meditation. Classes gain alternate abilities while dreaming. Certain truths can only be learned outside waking reality. Some NPCs exist only in dreams and may be more real than they appear. Vibe, mythic, uncanny, and quietly unsettling. Norrath dreams back. New class, the Oneironaut, added in the Dreaming Age expansion. Role, Illusionist, Melee Hybrid class. Overview, a class that navigates and manipulates the dream realms of Norrath. Oneironauts can phase walk through solid objects, create illusory duplicates of themselves, and even pull allies into the dream world to avoid danger. Their lucid strike ability allows them to attack an enemy's subconscious, causing movement slow and fear. Lore, Oneironauts are trained by the mysterious Dreamers of Lakshis, a secretive order that exists half in the waking world and half in dreams. Gameplay impact. unmatched for exploration and escaping dangerous situations. Echo Vault verified. EverQuest. Age of the Covenant. 2003. Echo Timeline. Designation V-Kiv Ascent. Fact Social MMORPG. Vault Tag Civic Social Dynamics MMO. Branch. Verified elements. Aborted social sim expansions for EverQuest 2 reappear fully realized here in EverQuest 1's primary arc as a full expansion in early 2003. Alternate guild mechanics also match Echo-verified variants of Star Wars Galaxies and EVE Online, Federation Epoch, another Echo-only build. The emphasis on player negotiation over raid dominance closely aligns with the Norrath as polity theory cluster. Historical divergence point. Instead of doubling down on raid-centric endgame, the team experiments with social scale progression, resulting in the 2003 expansion Age of the Covenant. Alternate history. Guilds, cities, and factions, not individuals, are the primary agents of change. Features and notable differences. Guilds sign binding covenants with cities, dragons, or powers. Large-scale projects, fortresses, libraries, roads, built over months. Political conflicts between player-led factions. Endgame content often negotiated, not conquered. Power expressed through influence as much as combat. Vibe. Civilization building MMO before that phrase was fashionable. This world spawned a dedicated academic analysis of games as negotiated societies in Echo Timeline universities. New class, Diplomat, added in the Age of the Covenant expansion. Role, Social Utility. Overview, a class focused on negotiation, trade, and faction management. Combat and group abilities are of a jack-of-all-trades variety, but isn't their main focus. Diplomats can broker alliances between guilds, reduce prices with merchants, and even charm NPCs into revealing secrets or offering different quests. Their Covenant Seal ability can temporarily bind two factions together, allowing them to cooperate without penalty. Lore. Diplomats are the graduates of Norrath's great academies, trained in the art of persuasion and politics. Gameplay impact, essential for guilds focused on city building, trade, or large-scale political conflicts. In closing, these are the worlds that could have been here and were elsewhere. The Norraths that lived, breathed, and thrived in other timelines. Each one a testament to what happens when creativity, passion, and listening to the players become the heart of a game. EverQuest wasn't just a game, it was a home, a dream, a living world, and in these echoes, it still is. The Story Bearer.